Hey, welcome to Vic Knows the Vibes, where every chat is a vibe check. I'm your host, Vicky, here to explore life's nuances with you. Are you ready to dive in and vibe together? All right, welcome to today's episode on regret, the shoulda, woulda, couldas of life. We're always told to live life unapologetically with no regrets, but we need to keep it real. It doesn't always line up that way, especially when, we get in bed and we lay our heads down at night and those what ifs start to really creep in. For example, I've passed on multiple opportunities that likely would have changed the direction of my life, both professionally and personally. And I definitely convinced myself at the time that it wasn't the right move. But looking back now, I would have to say truthfully, a lot of those decisions were made and led by fear because I was scared. Like scared of shaking things up, scared of failing, scared of having to authentically show up for myself. And now I can't help but wonder what would have happened if I had taken that leap. Where would I be right now? Better or worse? These questions are what really made me want to speak on this subject today because I know I'm not alone and I know there may be someone listening right now that can relate. Whether it's a decision that you made or didn't make, that stays with you. Maybe it's that relationship you ended or the one you stayed in for too long. Maybe it's the career move you didn't take, or maybe it's something small that's just added up over time. All of these choices lead us to the question of regret. Whether we genuinely carry them, and more importantly, why. While going through this episode, I asked that we all just take a second to really think about what we may regret most in life. That thing that you push to the back of your mind but can't fully shake off. Do you have any regrets? When looking at regret, I think there are a lot of emotions and feelings tied to it. I think some common ones include feelings of sadness, being repentant, or being very disappointed. You're disappointed over something that has or hasn't happened, or a choice that you've made. And I think a big part of that is also related to feelings of shame. I attended a wellness retreat recently, and one of the focus group discussions centered around shame and how a lot of societal and familial pressures played into that idea. And I feel like regret is closely related to that. Sometimes I have to actually stop and think about whether I regret something because of my true feelings or it's because of what I've been told or taught. There's been so many times where I've made a decision and maybe I truly don't even know how I feel about that decision, but because I know how my parent is going to react or how a sibling will react or a friend or a partner, I take on their emotions before I can even process my own. And obviously that is not the best way to go about it because this is my life, these are my decisions, and there is a piece of accountability and responsibility that has to be present in every decision that I make. But it's almost as though you don't want to disappoint other people, and sensing or feeling that disappointment from them is what makes you feel disappointed. And it's really hard to differentiate between the two because you're so closely aligned to these people. Maybe you see them every day or talk to them regularly, and there are things that you share in common, and you want to be able to celebrate your wins and your highs with them, but you know that if you're having a low, it might not be the best experience, and that's really tough. Which leads me to the question of how you really feel when you feel regret. What are you feeling inside? Are you feeling nauseous? Do you have a headache? Are you feeling sad? Do you have a knot in your stomach? I know for me, it's just tied to overthinking. I don't necessarily feel sad or angry or happy. I think my brain actually just starts to spiral in the sense that there's so many other options that could have been. Why did I go this route? Maybe it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to be. And so now I'm almost romanticizing everything else and saying, okay, well, option B, C, and D would have led me to this. And I would have been a multimillionaire and I would have had this and I would have had that. And it's like, girl, you actually have no clue where those choices would have taken you. And maybe if you had chosen option B, you would have been in a worse position. But the mind likes to play tricks sometimes. Which really has me thinking about both the emotional and physical impact of regret. I think a lot of the times we're really fixated on the emotional feelings that come with regret, the sadness, the stress, the anxiety, even. But there's still that huge physical component related to this. Now I'm not sleeping properly, I'm not eating properly, I'm gaining weight, I'm losing weight, my whole body's inflamed, and so much more. And this is all related to the fact that I am constantly thinking about my regrets and wishing I had done X instead of Y, as opposed to coming to a place of acceptance and moving forward with trust and support in ourselves. So the next question is, what do we do with this? After we have acknowledged and accepted that we are walking around with too many regrets and it's impacting us negatively, what do we do now? What's the next step? Now, before we go into that, I kind of just want to dive a little bit deeper into regrets and how it shows up in different facets of our life and why. First stop, relationships. I know we've all been there. We're looking at our past relationships, and there's some that we're like, ugh, what was I actually thinking? Or like, girl, really? We're having an out of body experience watching ourselves boohoo over someone, and it's like, why? But honestly, when it comes to relationships, I really am a firm believer that it's necessary. Whether it goes well or not, it's necessary for growth. And for me, I really do believe that every relationship that I've been in, maybe it didn't end the way I wanted it to end, but I still learned a lot about myself and other people. And I feel like, if nothing else, that's a win at my age, truly. I will say though, there's definitely moments that I look back on with past relationships and I'm like, I really wish I would have said something. I wish I would have loved myself more, to stand up for myself, advocate for myself, and speak my truth sooner rather than later. And there's also instances where I'm like, I probably didn't need to say that in that moment. But I think that just really comes with age and maturity and experience. And it's not necessarily right or wrong, it's more so a lesson. And I think that relationships have that special ability to really teach you about yourself and show you what you want or don't want. So, regrets for sure can exist in that capacity, but I don't really think it's a bad thing. I think it is okay and normal to regret saying or doing something that may have hurt one of your past partners. I think, again, that's what helps you grow and realize the need to do better. Regret can also pop up when you are in a new relationship and you're trying to move on. Again, you may start to romanticize the past or the other. I think the term is called phantom ex or phantom partner. So now it's that idea that your ex was the best person in the world and you should have never left them. But really, this is just another case of the grass looking greener, but not necessarily being greener. With relationships, it's tricky. You can definitely have regrets, but I feel like you shouldn't let those regrets impede you from moving forward. If you move forward and you still want to be that with that person, sure, shoot your shot. But if you don't and you have a clean break and you move on, that's okay too, because that's a part of your story and your journey. I am curious to know though, when it comes to my ex-partners, if they feel the same way I do. I mentioned that there's things that I've said and done that may have hurt my relationship or hurt my partner at the time. And I wonder if they feel the same. Like, are they standing on business or are they like, shoot, I shouldn't have said or done that? And to take it a step further, I'm curious if they regret the entire relationship or not. I'm just curious, but hey, maybe I'll never know. I want to move on to career regrets and life choices. So many of us look at our careers and wonder if we should have done something differently, and this is something that resonates so deeply with me. I've worked a lot of jobs since the age of like 14, and although I'm very proud of myself for having all of this experience and the confidence and the different skill sets that I've acquired from these different jobs, I'd be lying if I didn't also admit to the fact that there are instances that I'm like, maybe I should have seen that through. Maybe this was a bigger blessing hidden under this entry level job or hidden beneath this manager that I didn't get along with. I'd even go so far as to say that I've left jobs because I couldn't rise to the occasion. I was afraid of being seen for the mistakes that I was making, even though I was still learning. And that's probably the biggest regret I have associated with jobs or my career choices. I know I can do the job. Obviously, I was hired to do this job, but I got in my head too much and, I may have missed out on really great opportunities because of that. So, I've really learned how to appreciate myself and my skill set and understand that if I'm entering a new role or a new industry, there are going to be gaps in my learning. There is going to be a disconnect because it's something new. Even with these revelations, though, I can still appreciate where I am now when it comes to my career. I can still look back and say, girl, maybe you should have seen that through. Girl, why'd you do this? Whatever. And still know that it is leading me to where I need to be. Now, when it comes to life choices, it's not so cut and dry. As an African woman in her 30s, I am no stranger to family, friends, colleagues, the entire world telling you that you should be at a certain level of success and stability and direction. But truly, what happens if you're not there? What if you're still confused? What if you're pivoting? What if you want to try something new? What if you want to follow your dreams? And it can be very lonely, honestly, because you might feel like you're going against the status quo. Everyone around you who may have good intentions is living life a certain way and you're going the other way. If you can relate, I would encourage you to stay the course. Your life is your life for a reason. I saw a quote a few years ago that really stuck with me, and it said, "Your life is not a group project." It's nice to have people around you that support you and you can go to for advice or insight, but at the end of the day, these big decisions that you're making are yours to make. It's so common for us to want to fall in line and not appear radical, but the cost is so high. You take a job or career that you don't love, you marry a person that you know you're not compatible with, all because of these outside influences. But at the end of the day, you are the one left with these choices. No one else is coming to save you. And I hate that a lot of the time these revelations don't come to you until you're already in a situation that is very difficult to get out of. And this feeling of entrapment can be stifling. You don't know where to go next. And that's why I feel as though regrets are okay as long as you are still in the driver's seat. I've made a lot of decisions on my own, and I can live with those regrets because I know I made those decisions for me and what I thought was the best at the time. But when you're making decisions for other people or because of other people and what you think you should do or what they're going to say, it's just too many cooks in the kitchen. I speak personally when I say there's some big decisions I've made with other people at the forefront that I do regret. And I'm the one living with those decisions. It's so crazy. Like, I am the one who has to deal with the aftermath, but I did it because of you. And so that's why I am so adamant in being like, hey, focus on yourself. Do what you want to do. Yes, you can listen to other people's opinions and advice, but you don't have to internalize it, especially if you know that you don't feel the same way. I also just want to take a moment to shout out my youngest siblings, the baby last. Like, as a fellow baby last, I know it is not easy. People think that we're spoiled and we get away with everything, but a lot of times that's not the case. And when you're in a situation where all of your older siblings have seemingly followed a specific pathway and you are still figuring out what you want to do next, there is so much pressure on you. There is a lot of opinions coming your way, sometimes judgment, and sometimes even confusion. And it's difficult because I'm confused. So, how do I even address your confusion when I'm still trying to figure out my confusion? You know what I mean? I'm just sending y'all a virtual hug because we will figure it out one day. And I think a part of figuring it out, not just for youngest siblings, is learning to live with your regret. There are some regrets that just won't get resolved, and some doors will actually stay closed. Maybe you're not going to go back to school, you're not going to get that relationship back, or you're not going to be able to chase that dream in the way that you imagine. There's definitely a tension between accepting what we can't change and holding ourselves accountable for what we can. Yes, maybe that alternate life we daydream about would have been perfect, but it also could have been riddled with problems. It's a fine dance, but the goal is to reach a point where you're able to reflect while also being aware of yourself enough to recognize that there's no path without struggle, even if it's the one that we didn't take. As I get older, I'm realizing that a lot of life is going to be surrounded with those what ifs. And that's okay. Again, I think the goal, or one of the goals at least, is self-forgiveness. You want to be able to forgive yourself and acknowledge your wins and losses without encouraging complacency. It's okay to forgive yourself while also holding space for the lessons that the regret has taught you. We don't need to pretend that everything is perfect and my life is always sunshine and rainbows, It's about actually growing and understanding how to grow even through your hardest moments. For example, when you look at your biggest regrets, what decisions could you have made differently? Moving forward, what decisions can you make differently? What patterns are you noticing? Those are the hard questions you have to sit with. And of course, that brings me to my next question. How can we stop making decisions that lead to regret? I mean, I don't know for sure, but I would say that intentional living and decision making is a good place to start. Life is full of choices no matter what. If we start by addressing our fears and our insecurities and even looking at the outside pressures that are influencing us to make certain decisions, it's going to help us know ourselves more. When you're faced with a big decision, take a step back. Think about what you truly want versus what you've been taught to want. As I get older, I'm realizing that it's just so much easier to accept your success as well as your failures when you live authentically because you know where it's stemming from. You know that every decision you're making is from your own personal wants and needs. For example, if you pursue something because someone else told you to pursue it, you succeed and you're kind of just like, I didn't want to do this anyways. You fail and you're like, ugh, I did not want to do this anyway. But if it's stemming from your own true desires and from your heart, you go into it, you succeed, you feel like, wow, I did it. I wanted this. This feels great. You fail and you say, you know what? At least I tried. I won't regret this in 20 years because I did this for myself. Because at the end of the day, you're all you've got, baby girl. To wrap up, I do want to say that regret isn't inherently bad. Honestly, I think that it's truly a sign that we care and we're actually invested in our own lives. There's always going to be some regrets that sting, and that's okay. The real growth should be coming from what we actually do with those feelings. It's not necessarily about getting everything all right on your first go, but rather learning how to sit with those feelings that are associated with getting it wrong. After listening to this episode, I encourage you to take a few moments to look at your biggest regret. What have you learned from it? What's the next best choice you can make because of it? This reflection doesn't have to be about fixing the past and shoulda, woulda, coulda. It can more so be about using it as a guide for your future. Remember, this is your life and your life is not a group project. And with that, we've arrived at our takeaway vibe, which is you are not your worst decision. Every choice you've made thus far has led you to this very moment, and this moment is yours to define. Regret does not equal failure. It's more so a signpost along the way. So when you cling to your worst decisions or your biggest regrets, they seep into the core of your identity, and that pretty much traps you in a version of yourself that you don't even want to be. Life is truly about the journey, y'all. not a single misstep. So keep trying, keep failing, and keep succeeding. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on social media at Vic Knows the Vibes. And until next time, bye.